Welcome to the Twinmotion Media and presentation on Twinmotion. But again, yeah, just a quick introduction about me. So there's a little mugshot about me and some of my background there. So I don't want to dwell on that too long, but let's get right into it. So again, what is Twinmotion? I'm assuming most of you folks in the audience are aware of Twinmotion. This is more of a specific presentation today on what we're showing. But again, just Twinmotion is the animation and visualization platform for professionals. I mean, really the key features of Twinmotion is really the speed and ease of use. And again, it is a tremendous communications tool. And today we're going to cover how we can communicate those images and videos and presentation features out of Twinmotion. Again, it is relatively feature rich. I mean, there's also a lot of already included content in the software. And additionally, just I want to mention that if you have a Twinmotion license, you do have the ability to include external content, specifically the Quixel Megascan. So that's a relatively deep library of surface materials, assets, a variety of things that are completely included with your license with Twinmotion. And again, finally, Twinmotion is relatively fun to use, and as you kind of start using it, it kind of brings you in because the results are relatively fast. So let's get into a little bit what we're going to cover today. So today we're going to cover how to create some images in panoramas. We're going to utilize the different filters to change the scene appearance. There's things like clay feature and filters and a variety of other things that I can show you. I'll show you how to use the weather and lighting tools to change the overall seasonal feel of a scene. We'll also go to get into showing you how to adjust the camera's depth of field. I saw on the survey that happened to be one of the more popular ones. So I'm going to actually cover at a very high level how you can adjust the depth of field, talk a little bit about lighting and some of the other effects. And then we'll talk about how we can export all those images and movies in one single swoop of, rather than, rendering one image at a time, we can kind of put everything together in one package and just go ahead and export all those images and movies at once. I'll talk briefly about how we can create the VR experience and what it requires to do that. And then finally, we'll get into showing you how to do a construction phase animation. So with that, let me go ahead and get right into Twinmotion. So let me open up one of my sessions here. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was how can we extract or develop images right from our Twinmotion model. So in this viewport here, I just have a scene here that I can manipulate. I can change, my perspective on the view. But if I wanted to capture this image, it's relatively simple. So if I go down to my media menu down here, we're going to spend most of today's presentation down here on my basically what's called the breadcrumb menu system here. But if I go to the media panel, I can create an image by just going to my image command here, and you can see I already have a variety of images already created. But if I wanted to capture this particular scene from my viewport, it's just a matter of hitting on create image. Once I create that image, it gets added to my library here. You can see that it's called image 8. And once I have it here, there's a couple things I can do. One thing, I can rename it, I can delete it, I can duplicate it. So if I wanted to rename it, I'm going to actually rename this to 001 just so I have a reference point for it. So that's image 001. If I wanted to create another image or another view of my model, but perhaps it's a different perspective, I'm going to use this as the backdrop. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my little 3 dots again. I'm going to duplicate it. So I have an identical image here. It's 001, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rename this one again, call it 002. So I now have another image here, but I want it to be a different view from my viewport. So I'm going to go inside of my viewport here and kind of manipulate what I want to see. Perhaps it's something like this. And once I set up my view of what I want to capture, I'm going to come back to this image. I'm going to hit this little recycle and recapture it. So once it's recaptured, now I got my original image, and now I have my new image because I essentially had duplicated this, and then I readjusted my viewport and I recaptured it. So that's one way of getting images into your library here. Again, I can quit what's called media mill. I'll talk about that in a minute. what I can also do is I can come back here, change my perspective, something like that. And again, I can recapture this image. So again, I have a new image here. It renames it, image 19, but maybe I don't want that. So I can hit the 3 dots again, and I can go ahead and delete that. So relatively simple and fast for me to create images inside of Twinmotion. One of the other things that I can do here is create panoramas. But I'm going to create a panorama that is essentially a shot that's on the front face of this building here. So the way that I want to do that, if I go over to, let me change my camera view. So I'm going to go to my settings menu and go to camera. I'm going to use this line tool here, right here. I'm going to hit that line tool, and I want to align myself to the face of this wall here. So what you can see here now, it aligns my view so that I'm basically in an orthographic view of this building on a face here. So this is my orthographic view, essentially head on into the building, mainly because I use the align tool, so I can align my camera to the front face of this building. Now that I have that captured here, again, it's a matter of going back to my media panel. And then in this case, I want to create a panorama. Just like images, I click on panorama, and I create the panorama image. So it's saved here again in my library. I'll talk about that when we get to the end, when we're actually processing images, so you can kind of see the results of what a panorama view is. It's essentially just kind of a fisheye view of this building here. You can see the extends from more of a 180-degree view of this building here. But I can also go back to my media panel here and go to images. I want to capture this one in my images as well. So I'm going to go ahead and capture that. So here it is. Again, I'm going to rename this so that I have them kind of in sequence. I'll call this 003. So now I have this image here called 003, which is kind of a front-on perspective view. So anytime that I manipulate this view, if I zoom in, zoom out, whatever it might be, and I want to update that view, it's just a matter of coming back to this view. Oops. I'm sorry, I want to zoom in a little bit and then hit the recapture. So it recaptures that view, so now it locks this in place. And so now that we have a variety of images kind of into my library here, the nice thing about Twinmotion is that each one of these images can be manipulated independently of my viewport. And the way that we do that is because we're in what's called the media mode here. So when I select an image from my library, it puts me into this media mode. And because I'm in media mode, now I can manipulate just this specific image now. And the way that we can do that is by hitting this little more button on the bottom here. So I hit the more button, it opens up the commands that are available to me so that I can manipulate this view. So the first thing that I want to kind of get into is kind of the next topic, was showing you how we can manipulate these views with using some of the filters and effects that are kind of built into Twinmotion. So if I go into my camera, and this is specific just to this view, and I go to some of the visual effects here, I'm going to touch on each one of these here. So the first one is this color gradient. And again, there are a variety of things that are built into Twinmotion. So if I go ahead and click on type, right now it says none. But if I click on the none, it populates and gives me a variety of options that I can change more or less the mood of this view. So if I click on each one of these, you can see that it kind of changes the coloring. I call it mood. It changes the mood of each one of these views here. So you can kind of snap along and kind of pick each one of these views and kind of decide if you wanted to change what that appearance of that view is. So you can go back to none. Additionally, you have some of these contrast and saturation controls as well. So I can just grab the slider here, and maybe I want to bump up the contrast here, or maybe pull out some of the contrast here. So again, these values here are editable, so I can go right back to the default, which was 50%. So I can type that value in there, and it brings it back to where it was. Additionally, I have a saturation for the RGB settings. So again, I can bump that value up, and you can really see that the color saturation really starts to get deeper and deeper here as I move that up. Or I can desaturate it and bring it out, and looks a little bit more black and whitish. And again, I can grab this value and bring that back to normal, back to 50%. So that's one of the tools inside of Twinmotion where we can adjust the gradation of this view. And again, I'll mention it again. We're in what's called the media mode. So I'm only adjusting just this image that I captured. And if I were to apply any one of these filters to the scene and I really wanted to keep that, it's a matter of going back to that image and going, say, recapture this, okay? So let me go back to none. And let's go back to the other visual effects here, which is some of the filters. So again, by default, it's no filters applied to the image. But if I click on none, it gives me this library of built-in filtering effects here. So these are kind of fun. So I can go to like an 8-bit view, so it really kind of pixelates that. I can go into what's called a ballpoint pen view. And you can see by going into ballpoint pen, it kind of puts it on a piece of paper here. You can see the spiral rings here of the paper. I can also do what's called a blueprint view. There's a couple variations of the blueprint view. One that's a little less saturated with the blue, and here's a little deeper blue. And then some other things here. There's a cross stitch. There's a halftone, and then there's halftone comic. So these are for use if there's a certain effect that you're wanting to portray to your customers, whether they're internally or externally. You have these filters here that you can fuss with or apply to your images, and then you can, if you were to select any one of these, you can still continue to manipulate those a little bit deeper. So that's the filtering. So let me move back and talk about the last one here, which is called clay rendering. So clay rendering is kind of fun. So let me go ahead and enable this. Let me see, turn that on. It'll take just a minute here. So what clay rendering does is it changes the view of this to kind of this clay view. It looks like a clay model now. And so there are things that I can do in terms of manipulating the selection set. So right now it just took the whole model and all the environmental objects and made them kind of into this clay view. But I can control some of those things. So maybe I don't want the glass to be clayed out. Maybe I don't want the vegetation. Maybe my characters. So, you can select what it is that you don't want to be included in this clay view. So now you can see that the trees and the people in this view and the windows, of course, have been exempt from the clay view. So those are kind of some fun features there. Go back here. So that's one of the fun features here. And again, if I wanted to keep that, I would just go ahead and hit that recycle, but I don't really care to do that. So that was the filters and some of the effects that you can put onto your views very, very quickly. So let me go to another image here. I'm going to select my image 1. And again, I'm still within what's called the media mode. So again, let me show you very quickly. If I get out of media mode, I'm back to this viewport where I can kind of manipulate and look around my model and do as I please. But again, once again, if I select this image, it puts me in the media mode. It's only affecting this image and not the content of my viewport. So let me move on to the next little topic, which is talking about some of the weathering and lighting tools that we can do. So again, I'm going to just show you how we can manipulate that in this particular image here. So again, I'm going to hit on my More button. And the first thing I want to do is I can show you how we can change the time of day. So again, I have a little slider, so I can slide and change the time of day very, very easily here. I can also change the time of the month or the time of year that the scene is in. There's also this idea of changing the north offsetting, so I can manipulate where north is on my view here. And then finally, I can also select a geographical location. Since I'm in San Francisco, I'm going to go ahead and select San Francisco. And by selecting San Francisco, it places my model in that geographical location, and it acquires those lighting or daytime settings for my model here. Some of the other things that I can do inside of here is I can change the weather. So I have my weather slider. So let me go back to that. So I have another icon here, which is the weather. So clicking on weather, I have a couple sliders here. So right now the scene here has these clouds in the sky you can see. But if I slide this back to a full sunny day, it removes those clouds. So again, I can slide this over and I can start introducing weather. So I got more clouds, it gets a little cloudier. And now as I get I can start showing some of the rain. You can see some of the raindrops and the puddling on the ground there. And then I can go full on, thunderstorm kind of situation here. So you have that ability to change the mood and feel of that view by changing the weather. We can also manipulate the seasons. So again, I could grab the slider, and as I start to move towards, the fall, the trees start to change their colors. And then again, as I get further and further into the winter here, snow starts to appear, and then I have like full on winter. And again, with winter being here, I can change that and say, well, I want it to start snowing a little bit. So I can start introducing snow here. The raindrops now go from the wet raindrops to snow, and then I can turn it up to a full-on nice snowy day. And then there's some effects that we can apply here. So if I go to my effects here, I can start bringing in what's called smog. So as I slide this up, I introduce smog, it starts looking more like a blizzard. So this effect, as I bring the smog up even further and further, it really becomes more of a blizzard type of day that as you introduce that smog. There's also this idea, I can turn the particles also. Essentially what that does is it gets rid of the snowing effect, but it still shows that hazy smog there. So I can affect that as well. So let me go back to a nice, more or less, mostly sunny day, and we'll make this, make this summer. Oh, and I actually have let me turn off my smog here. It looks a little hazy, it looks like a foggy morning, so I'll get rid of that smog. So what some of the other effects in here, so let me go ahead and zoom in on this flag here, because that will illustrate this little piece with regard to some of the other physics of the environment. So I have this flag here that's kind of wafting in the wind. I can also affect the speed of the wind. So again, I have a little slide here. I can bring that down. As I bring the wind speed down, you see that the flag now starts gently wafting in the wind. Again, if I bring that up, it's a little bit more, I don't want to use the word, but violent, but a little bit more active there. And then we can change the direction of the wind as well. So if there's a specific feel or mood that you want to create inside of your seed, you have the ability to change the wind direction and speed. And again, it's not only affecting this flag here, but if I zoom in a little bit on some of these leaves, you can see that the leaves are inheriting the physics of that wind there as well. So again, if I drop that wind down, the leaves are just kind of wafting lightly into the wind there. So that's the idea of using some of the weathering and lighting effects inside of Twinmotion by using the weather and location tools here. So let me go back again to, let me select a different image here. Let me go and select, let's say, let me go to image 21 here. So again, I'm still working inside of the media mode. So I want to select this image here, and it's bringing me to a further out perspective, but I want to zoom in a little bit and change the view of what we were looking at here. So let me try to zoom in and not make you overly nauseous. Let me zoom in around this car here and twist around a little bit. So, whoa, sorry about that. Maybe somewhere in here. Somewhere in here, I want to look a little bit to the east for this particular shot here. So I got this view here. I use this image 21 as my backdrop, but I want to duplicate this. So I'm going to duplicate that. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have duplicated it first and then reset my view. So let me, before I do that, let me go ahead and rename this to 04. And let me manipulate this view. I apologize for that. One moment. So as you can see, I should have duplicated it first and then recaptured my image so that I can get what it is that I want to show you here. So I just want to grab a little bit of the tail end of that fancy car there. So I'm in this view here. So again, I'm going to go back to I want to recapture this just to make sure. Again, so I recapture that view here. I'm going to go to my More menu again. So let me change a few things about this. So I'm going to change the time of day to, let's say 7 7:30 in the morning. So now we got the sun over here in the east. And I want to change my north offsetting a little bit different. So let's make that 212 degrees. So it's kind of right in front of me here. So now you can see where I can start manipulating what it is that I'm seeing here by changing the time of day and the north offsetting a little bit. So let me go back and change some other things here. So I've already got the clouds in the sky, that's fine. But let me go to the lighting feature here. So maybe I want to make this view a little bit warmer. So I can change the white balance here by bringing this up. It warms up that view a little bit, makes it a little softer, a little bit warmer, you know, the view, so it's not so bright. So I want it to reflect a little bit of a warmer sense here. Maybe my exposure, I want to bring the exposure of the view down a little bit so it's not so bright. So I have the exposure tools here. And let me bring down the intensity here a little bit. Sun reflectivity, there's a variety of other things. I'll show you how we can do some of these star intensities and moon intensities because I'll do a similar view here. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let me go back to my view and let me go ahead and recapture that just to save it again. And let me do a couple other things. Let me go to my camera and I'm going to introduce a little bit of vignetting here. So as I turn up the vignette, you can see that the perimeter of the view starts to darken up a little bit. So it's this vignetting effect. And I also want to introduce a little bit more of a lens flare. So as I bring up that lens flare, you can see this lens flaring here in this view. So it gives it kind of more of a realistic view of I'm taking a photograph into the sun and I got these lens flares here. So that looks kind of interesting to me and I'm liking that. So once I'm happy with that, again, I'm just going to go ahead and recapture it. And that's going to be my sunrise view. So again, I'm going to do a similar thing here. Again, before I change my view, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this view as well. And then I'm going to rename it. I'm going to go 005. And for this view, I'm going to again go to my More button. I want to change this to nighttime. So let me make this like 2200 hours. And let's change the north offsetting a little bit as well. So one moment here. Let's change this to like 160 degrees. So it puts that moon here. But I also want to change this a little bit. And oops, I want to save it. And let's go back to the weather because I want to get rid of those clouds. So bring that, get rid of the clouds and make it a more of a clear night sky. And let's go back to camera again. So in the, oh, sorry. I want to go to lighting, sorry. And I want to go to the settings here where now I want to bring the stars up. And I want to bring down the moon intensity a little bit. Maybe the ambient light comes up a little bit, you know, so now we can kind of see some of the stars in the sky a little bit. So you can see now how I can kind of, again, change the mood of this view as opposed to a sunrise. Now it's more of a nighttime scene with the moon in the sky. I got some stars going on. Again, I can kind of adjust some of these things here. Maybe bring this moon down a little bit more, somewhere in there. So now we can kind of see the stars a little bit better. So again, once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and recapture it. So now I've saved those views that I had that I want to go ahead and render it when I'm ready to do the rendering. So let me move on to the next topic here. So let me grab another image and work with this one. So I have a view here that's kind of at a low ground level. And again, I'm going to go to my More button and my camera. So we can turn on what's called parallelism. So you can see that in this view, from the perspective I'm at, I'm kind of looking up at the building. So the skew of the building is kind of in perspective. I can turn that off as well. So you can make it where the parallelism is on. So now all these vertical features are you know, at a 90-degree angle. So again, depending upon the effect that you're going for, that's something that you can turn on or off the parallelism. So I'm going to keep it with parallelism off. So let me get into showing you a little bit about the depth of field here. And the way that works is you would need something in the foreground here. Like I have these trees here, these leaves, I'm sorry, in front of the building. So if I turn on my depth of field here, little button here, turn that on, and I kind of mess with my focal point here. You can see that as I zoom in a little bit on these leaves, the leaves become more in focus, and then my building becomes out of focus a little bit. And then there's some other tools inside the depth of field command here where I can start manipulating maybe a little bit about its distance, so I can bring that up. So now I have my leaves a little bit out of focus, and then my building becomes in focus. And again, just like a camera lens, I can adjust the aperture. So as I open that aperture lens up further, now everything is in focus here. So you have these tools here where you can adjust that depth of field here. So I close down that aperture lens really small, then the things in the foreground now become a little bit out of focus, and then I'm focusing now on the backdrop there of my building. So at a very high level, I know that was one of the survey questions, but that's essentially how you can get into changing your depth of field inside of Twinmotion. It's a relatively simple tool there, and it's a matter of experimentation. So you would just get in here and start manipulating the distance here, and as I change that, you can see even more so the leaves in the foreground become less and less in focus. Okay, we're on the home stretch here. How am I doing for time? We're still in good shape. Let me get out of media mode and go back to my actual editing viewport. So now I'm back to my editing viewport. So again, it removes myself from that particular view that I was in that had certain settings on it. So now I want to create a quick little video or animation here inside of Twinmotion. And again, just as it is to create images, creating videos is a relatively simple process as well. So again, back down on my media command here. Again, we showed you images, panoramas, and then now I'm going to go to video. So in a video, I want to go ahead and, again, just like creating an image, I'm going to create a video. And when I create a video, by default, it's going to grab that view that I had in my viewport, and that's fine with me. I can manipulate this, and maybe I wanted it to be something a little bit different. Maybe it's that. Again, I just recapture that. Okay. So now that I have that view, I'm going to create another what's called keyframe. I'm just going to kind of pan around here. Maybe do like a more or less a 180-degree kind of pan, and maybe a little bit of a zoom over to here. And once I've selected that as my second keyframe, I'm going to go ahead and hit the little plus here, and then it'll add a keyframe to this animation sequence. So once it's created these two keyframes, I can just go ahead and play that. So now I got an animation sequence starting from keyframe 1, and it does the whole interpolation of that sweeping across from left to right, and it will end my animation based on my last keyframe. And some of the other things that we can do inside of here is, now that I have this animation sequence, which is called part 1, I can add another part here. Maybe I want to cut away to something completely different. So let me go ahead and hit the little plus here, the plus. Now it's going to append another part of my animation to this sequence. So I'm going to go to this view here, but I want to go to somewhere inside the building. So I'm going to use my scene graph. I'm going to search for that billiards table, and I'm going to select it and hit my F key, and it takes me to my billiards table because I want to go inside the building a little bit. So I want to be somewhere in here, maybe something like that. And this is the starting keyframe that I want for this next sequence or part of my video. So again, I'm going to go ahead and recapture it. So I recaptured that, but you can see it kind of updated here. And then I want to walk down this floor here a little bit. Maybe end up down here at the end, and maybe kind of turn to the left here a little bit and end up looking out the window. So again, I'm going to add that as a keyframe. So now I got two keyframes there, and now I got two parts to my animation. So I'll go ahead and run that. So it's going to do the panning of the external of the building, and then it's going to quickly cut to the internal walking of that corridor. So you can kind of see how quickly it is for you to create presentation media that you can share with your customers, whether it's internal senior management or an actual customer. You can start sharing these kinds of content and images with your customers. So that's really how easy it is for you to create the content inside of Twinmotion. Now that we have all this content built inside of Twinmotion, let me quit media mode again. So again, we've created a variety of images. We created one panorama scene. So let me go back to showing you how we can package all this and create the images that you can have in JPEG or PNG files or MP4 files or whatever they may be. So if I go down to my export button here, command, it's going to present me with a variety of things where I can start doing my export. So if I click on the empty button here, you can see it's going to present me with all the images that I have in my library right now. I only want to do these two. I don't want to do all of them. I'm just going to select which ones I want to create. So I'm going to grab those two. In my panorama command, I want to go ahead and create that one panorama image. So that's fine. And then again, in my video, I want to capture video 2. And then and again, this is putting everything in one container. And again, if I had created a presenter file, which I have, I can actually add that to this export as well. So once I've selected all of the items that I want to go ahead and export, it's just a matter of hitting the export. And then it will go ahead and process all that and create all those images for you. So in the interest of time, I did this yesterday. I will show you essentially the similar images that I created. So it packaged all this. I created the 2 images, my panorama and my video. So again, I have my image here. So you can see this is again the image that I created for the sunrise, and then the nighttime scene here with the moon in the sky, and then this is the panorama view. So again, it's sort of that fisheye view. It takes the view that your camera was at the front of the building, and it just sort of did this 180 view of the environment. So that's the idea of the panorama. And then again, I had my video here that I won't play, but you got to get the idea. So just to give you a sense of how long that took to process, that probably took, I think just under 8 minutes to process those exact images, those 2 images, the panorama, the video, and it took about 8 minutes. So again, your results are, to get results, it's very, very quick to get that. One of the other things that I wanted to bring to your attention was that you can change the resolution of these images. I took the default, but you can change that. So if I select any one of these images, let this update here, and again, I go to my more, I can go to format. So under format, I had it by default, the images that I processed were just full HD, but I can change it to, ultra high definition. I can do custom as well. So if I'm in custom, I can come in here, and I can put whatever resolution I want in here. So you can start manipulating what type of resolution you want to export your images out to. So, and again, that is specific to each one of these images. So, it's not going to do a broad stroke change to the resolution of each one of these. You have to come in and update the resolution of those images in this format here. So we're on the home stretch here. Just want to talk about a couple other things inside of Twinmotion, and one of which was VR, the virtual reality kind of ability that is built into Twinmotion. So there are 2 ways that we can integrate with virtual reality within Twinmotion, and Twinmotion is compatible with a variety of headsets, the HTC Vive, the Oculus Rift, and any of the mixed reality headsets. So if you have any of those hardware pieces, it will work just fine inside of Twinmotion. And the way that we would do that is, like I say, there's 2 methods. There's one inside the editing viewport here. So you can have your headset on and you can start manipulating and working inside of Twinmotion via virtual reality. It's just a matter of selecting the VR mode here inside my little icon eye menu here. It's just a matter of selecting VR here. The other method is to go into what's called the presenter mode. So earlier I showed you that when you create a presenter file is essentially packaging whatever images or videos that you want to put together in a packaged executable file that you can share with your customer. And so once the customer gets that presenter file, they can interact with that presenter file in the VR mode. So they would just, again, once they get the file, they select the VR mode, and then they can start using their headset to start looking around that file, around that environment. One thing to note, though, is that if you are going to do real-time VR inside of the editor viewport window here, it's important to have what is called your frame rate. And the recommended frame rate is about 90 frames per second. And you can see here that my frame rate is relatively low. I got a lot of stuff going on here. I got two versions of Twinmotion running in the background. I got a WebEx meeting going on. I got a variety of things here. So it's really kind of stepping on my performance here. But you can manipulate that. So again, if you go to the little hamburger menu here, and I go to my preferences, I go to quality. If you bring down this quality down to low, I'm gonna say okay, you can see that now the resolution of the view it kind of becomes a little bit more simplistic, but my frame rate has increased. But again, if I didn't have all this stuff going on in the background, my frame rate would be have no problem interacting with the headset. So again, the rule of thumb is kind of, you're going to have to have a compromise between what you're seeing here and your frame rate. So again, you can manipulate that again through the preferences and the quality. I'm going to go back to high because I kind of like to see my reflections and my shadows and all the things inside of my viewport here as I'm editing my view here. So those are the two ways of getting into VR. So again, just make sure your frame rate is set up appropriately. The last thing I wanted to talk about very briefly is how we can do a construction phase animation. So let me open up a different session of Twinmotion. So I have this building here, hotel, that's in a setting. And what I've done is I've created a simple animation. So if I go back to my media panel here and I go to video, I've already created a video here. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this. Nothing overly complicated. Again, it's just sort of a pan of my building from left to right, where I just want to show my building from this video here. But the way that we can do phasing inside of Twinmotion is if I again go to my media panel, my media command, and I go to phasing. So phasing is essentially a visual tool for showing how you can show the phases of your building progress through the scene graph. So what I mean by that is that you can set up this phase here. You can add various phases here. I got 6, 7 different phases here, but I can start scrubbing through this. So what I mean by that is that right now I can't see the building, but I have some construction equipment on my site. If I scrub to phase 2, some of the equipment goes away. Go to phase 3. Now I kind of start seeing the foundation of my building. Phase 4, now I see the columns. I have a overhead crane that's been introduced. And then finally I have, more of the floor plates being constructed on my site. And then, you could start adding all those features into your phases. And then finally at the very end, I have my complete building. So once you compose what it is that you want to phase, and it's just a matter of controlling what you're turning on and off from your scene graph. So again, if right here, you can see that the eyeball is not turned on for a lot of these things here. It's really just the starting ground. But if I scrub over to phase 6, you can now see swimming pool slabs are turned on and a variety of other things are starting to get turned on. I got my one of my generic floor plates on. So you can see that the way that you're going to manipulate this phasing schedule is by turning objects on and off from your scene graph. And then once you have this phase all set and you're happy with how it looks with regard to maybe it's your construction phase or your schedule, what I can do now is I can go back to my video. I have my video here. Oops, let me go back. And again, I'm going to click on my more, and I can say now, do I want to apply a phasing to this? Well, yeah, I'm going to apply that one phasing that I've created. Okay, I'm going to go back to this video. Now when I play it, it will inherit my phasing viewing into the animation. So again, that's essentially how simple this is to apply the phasings that you've created on your schedule and incorporate that into the video. So the video obviously could be anything that you wanted. So again, very simple for me to create that phasing there. And just one last thing, if I wanted to show you, let me get out of these two projects here. So bear with me. I'm going to get out of this one as well. And what I wanted to show you was the presenter file. So again, inside of Twinmotion, you have that inside of Media, you're going to create a presenter file. And essentially, it's this Twinmotion presenter exe file. So once you've composed that exe file, it's just a matter of sharing it with your client or your customer. I just want to wait for this to close out here. So just bear with me. It'll take just a minute. And the presenter file is the second method of using the VR tools. So again, if you're in the editing mode inside your Twinmotion session, that is one way of doing it. I'm just trying to wait for this to close itself down, but maybe it's safe now. I'm going to go ahead and click on the presenter file. And again, it tags it. It knows that this is a presenter file, so that the person on the other end knows that they're going to get a presenter file. And let this load up here. And so again, it's a packaged file, so you can build in whatever specific images that you want them to see, or any specific videos that you want them to see, and they will have access to that, and then they can walk around the model. So I'm hoping this opens up here. And there again, I'm going to close that out. But again, you can see here that I've built in a variety of images, so you can kind of pick through them. You know, maybe you want your customer to see specific things about this building, and you can have them look through these things, whatever they may be. And again, once they have the model, they can start walking through it as if they own it. So again, this is a great way for them to kind of explore the model without really having it. So you can share what it is that you're trying to articulate to them by just sharing this presenter file. And again, if I go ahead and click on my eye icon, I can go to full VR here. So if your customer has an Oculus headset, they can turn that on and they can start walking through this building using their virtual reality hardware as well.